Hello, this is Seth Larson. I'm here for my final project recording where I chose entrepreneurial mindset module number 3 because of the following reasons. I chose not to move forward with this investment for my saffron business because it took too much capital to raise. It was mentioned by Mr. Sestak, who is a loan officer for new business startups and for farming startups, and also from Kelsey Foster, that perhaps $1 million was 1,150,000 in my total budget was not going to be enough to cover expenses for the first 3 years. It was recommended that perhaps I needed to raise more money in order for the company to stay above water. However, I think that as a young man in the position that I am, I'll be entering dental school in the next year. That's might not be the best option. That'd be a lot of added stress to an already stressful schooling. Uh, Upon graduation and running my practice of dentistry, a few years might go by, and I'll probably likely review this idea once again and determine if I can come up with more funds, perhaps even funded by myself, because hopefully I'll be making a pretty decent amount of money as a potential dentist or orthodontist. It was anything more than my 100 or $1,150,000 loan just seems a little bit out of reach. As when I talked to some of my in my financial section where I showed up at different banks and asked for a loan for my project, a lot of them like to see that you have enough uh, commitment by yourself, and anything more than what I asked for just doesn't seem realistic at this time for me. You have to. They usually want you to have like 75% of uh, what you're asking for to be like legitimized, and I can't really do that at this time. Well, and another problem is that overseas competition has a growing season advantage on me. Like in India is a huge producer of saffron, and they can grow throughout the year round. Whereas here in Nebraska, I would only have a growing season that's only so big, and you really can't work around that too much unless you were to do a greenhouse. And I would look into that further, like once I was in the market and in the business. But for now, it's not really practical, and it costs even more money than I already have. Another problem with like the overseas markets is that they already have an established market. You know, they already do their distribution and provide the saffron and have commitments from different businesses and middlemen. And I really can't compete with that right now. Maybe in the future when we have more production output than what I would be able to do at this time. So why didn't the business succeed? Like I said, I had a high cost of initiation. The cost of the crocus sativus bulbs to make that is the flower that makes the saffron is just astronomical. That is my largest part of where my money would go if I was given a loan. It would almost cost $700,000 just to produce what little bit of like land coverage that I'm trying to produce, which is like 55 pounds of saffron, which is not a lot of saffron, but it's well worth the investment if you can get over the 3-year hump of where you just continue to keep losing money. And that's where I lose a lot of the investment bankers, is that it would take more than 3 years for me to earn back and get in the black. So that was a tough one to get over. Another problem would be my dependency and reliance on others. Hopefully I'll be entering dental school within the next year. And that if I were to start looking into like the saffron business now and like getting things rolling there, I would have to depend on family and friends like no other for at least 4, 5, 6 years even. They'd have to do a lot more than I feel comfortable asking, and honestly that I even feel comfortable at having them do, because I would like to have an input, especially after all this investigation that I've done in the past couple months for this class. The financial hurdle, it's a big one. I mean, that's a huge investment, over $1 million. And honestly, as Mr. Sestak and Kelsey Foster mentioned, that might not even be enough. That's a lot of money. And anything more than that would just I don't think I could manage it. So, I mean, there are a lot of positives to the industry. Um, there's a niche for my saffron business. There really is. Mr. Sistak even admitted that there was so. I created this map here where it shows where they grow saffron in the United States, and it's literally just in Vermont and Pennsylvania. I mean, there's a huge part of the United States here where there's no producer of saffron. So, I mean, there is a market for it. It's being underproduced in the United States at this time being. Another positive is that I have land. Being that my family is a bunch of farmers, we do have the potential to expand. We would literally have about 1,000 acres before we'd have to start looking into renting or purchasing land for added production facilities or added production land to grow the Crocus sativus on itself. Mr. Sestak is the financial banker that I'm referencing a lot here because he had a lot of knowledge in the agribusiness area. He mentioned that he really liked the saffron business was an alternative crop to like the majority of cash crops in Nebraska, which is like corn, soybeans, other forages like cool season, warm seasons, you know, which is like tall fescue, smooth brome, things like that. And saffron's a lot different from that, and that was something he was interested in. Um, there's a lot of growing interest in like organic foods and like natural herbs and spices, and that would be that would fit into like my niche because uh, saffron has a lot of like antioxidant benefits, and like marketing it as like a healthy alternative, like I would think it could be like the next kale, you know, like it's a product that a lot of people haven't heard of. Like kale wasn't really at the time being either, and then it just boom, it's just like took off because there's all these perceived health effects. And saffron, upon investigation, literally has almost as many, if not even more, than kale did. So the application of this business plan to like my career path is actually legitimate. Even though I'm not going into this business at this time, it's taught me a lot. It's given me different avenues that I could possibly take. At the beginning of the semester, I was looking into either saffron or hemp as an investigation. But upon like looking into the hemp industry at this time, you need new passage of laws, regulations, things that you have to get through Congress for state legitimacy versus the United States. There's a whole ordeal there. But perhaps by the time I get out of dental school, start working and make some money, and I take over the farm for my family, maybe there'll be these legalized growing efforts that I could do the hemp. And up here in the top right, I even created this box here where it shows the different types of things that you can get out of a hemp stock. You know, animal bedding, cordage from the fibers themselves. The stock can produce a potential biofuel, so that's a pretty big thing. The fibers can also be used in clothes. There's actually a lot of clothes right now out in the world where the hemp is being used. I mean, that's a huge deal because then the reliance on cotton, silk, other chemically produced fibers, it takes a huge relief off of that. Other applications to my career. After dental school, I'm going to have to apply for a loan anyhow to create my own practice. And now that I have put together a business plan, I kind of know what needs to go into it. It takes a lot of work, and having this background to fall back on and will be hugely, hugely effective. And I believe it would pay off most definitely when I apply to the banking industry themselves. Now that I know like what the banking industry professionals are looking for, like detail, oh, they love detail. They want you to prove that you have the money, income to get their loan back as soon as possible. They really want to know what makes you different. They want that personal story. They want to know why you're driven, how much you can do, if there's complications that you'll keep driving more, and then collateral. You know, the biggest thing for a bank loan is you have to have collateral in case things don't work out. They need to have secure their loan and their company as well as trying to help you out. So I had 4 key takeaways from the number 3 choice here. My first takeaway was that you have to work with other entrepreneurs. You got to expose yourself to entrepreneurs, attend networking events, and you have to share your story with people. When you share your story with people, they connect with you. It creates, it makes you stand out. People really want to know what you produce, how you do it, what makes you special. When you create that kind of connection with them, it really pays off. My key takeaway number 2 was that you have to network, have exposure to entrepreneurship. Networking is literally always effective. There's no time that you shouldn't be networking. And now I have an idea of like what other entrepreneurs have gone through. I've had exposure to entrepreneurship. I have attended events. It's really helped me to realize what kind of things I'd be getting into if I were to follow through on a similar business, maybe this business plan in a few years, things like that. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. So if you network with them, make them feel comfortable. In a few years, when you have the possibility to create for them, they'll be that much more inclined to join you. A key takeaway number 3 was care for the customer. Give before you ask was a huge thing that Les Brown had in his series that we watched. The son of Mamie Brown. He's a hardworking guy, and he had some really good points. You got to create value for yourself. You got to get your foot in the door, do things that people don't expect. That kind of goes with the give before you ask. It's to go that extra mile before asking someone to do something for you. If you make the effort for first and then like they owe you a favor or something like that, that's a good thing because that makes them think that like they know who you are and that you've done something for them, so you can help them benefit and then they can do the same for you. Another thing that he pointed out was to see yourself as a billionaire. If you see yourself as a billionaire, you're going to have potential like nothing else. And then you got to act like it. If you act like it, you're going to do things like it. So if you have the potential to care for the customer in such a way that no one else does, if you go that extra mile, they're really going to appreciate it. Key takeaway number 4, failure is unavoidable. I don't see this choice as for the number 3 option here of explaining how things would be taken differently as a failure. If we don't fail, we're not attempting to better ourselves and we're not innovating. Like it says at the top left here of the screen, the first attempt in learning is what fail stands for. It's not a bad thing. It makes you get better. It helps you to see why you haven't succeeded necessarily, but it's also not that you haven't succeeded. It's that you might have succeeded in a different way. It's all about perspective. Like the saying goes, every cloud has a silver lining. So when we fail, we also have the opportunity to start afresh. We don't necessarily see what's good about future immediately, but it gives us an opportunity to hit that restart button and think about our new possibilities. It takes a lot to deal with failure and to get back up, but it teaches us to be courageous and to keep going. When you have little else to lose, there is that much more to gain. I had 2 entrepreneurial mindset adjustments that I'm going to make in my life that I believe are going to be successful and help me. You got to have the mindset of success. Helps you stand out. Always have a level of confidence and competence and always look to expand the business. Having a mindset of success, I think, is really valuable. If you see yourself as a success and your business is going to be a success because of that, there's a good chance and a better than not chance that it will be a success because you're going to keep grinding. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep pushing. And when you do that, you're going to stand out. And that's going to show the confidence, show the competence, and it's going to make your business stand out. And when it stands out, you're going to be able to expand. And when you can expand, that's really when you get going. So my second one where I'm going to improve my entrepreneurial mindset, you got to do it. You just got to do it. You got to make things happen. You got to stand up for your dream. You got to stand up for your business. You got to stop making excuses. One thing that I liked about Mimi Brown's son, Les Brown, was his friend was quoted to say, "When you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them." And then that I mean, that not only caught his attention, it caught my attention. And you're like, wow, shoot, I don't want to keep making excuses. Then, like, if I can make excuses, then how am I ever going to actually get going? Like, oh, I'll listen. I'm going to make that effort. You got to make it happen. No one's going to do it for you. No one's going to do it for me. No one's going to do it for anyone. You got to make it happen for yourself. And when you have that product, that service that really gets you going, when you find your path, that's when you're going to push for it. And that's how you're going to get success. All right. So I attended 2 networking events as a part of this process, and they were a lot more valuable than I thought they were going to be. So the first one I signed up for was the Combine Open House. This on the right is like the receipt and like the ticket that I had to use to get into that, just to show kind of like that I was there, I suppose. It was an open house. It was listed on Lincoln's startup calendar. I networked with like industry professionals, kind of different than the next one, the next event that I'm going to talk about. Most of the people there were already established businesses and UNL employees themselves, so they weren't really entrepreneurs necessarily, but it did provide like a option and an opportunity for me to connect with people and to really invest in others. I was like the only student there. It was mostly all like middle-aged men and women. So when I walked in, they were a little bit taken aback, but it really like helped me stand out. And I don't usually stand out. Well, I mean, I stand out in a crowd because I'm pretty tall. I mean, like 6'6", but like I try to like shrink to the back and like stay away. But this time, I decided to really just kind of put my best foot forward, really kind of invest in myself so I can invest in others. And it really paid off. A couple of them even commented like how young I was and like how impressed that they were that I was at an event like this. Like no one shows up to these apparently of like my age group. The Combine is located on Innovation Campus in Lincoln, and it kind of mostly talked about how the building was used and like how other like businesses could use the incubator, but it was still a very valuable experience. So the second event that I attended was the sales and pricing strategy by the NBDC, which is the Nebraska Business Development Center. The information was presented by Mr. Jacob Mimic. He was probably about 26 years old, so that was kind of relatable for me. He's a few years older than I am, but it was kind of nice to hear from someone that was in my age group instead of kind of just talking over me to the other people that were attending. Things that we talked about were like the pricing cycle, which is like where you understand your customers' unmet needs and show them the value that you're going to offer. You got to evaluate your competitive like weaknesses and advantages, as well as your competitors' equal or strengths and advantages. You got to make sure you know your stuff. You got to make sure you know your costs, and you got to keep that break even low. Keep it as low as you can. If it's too high, find a way to reduce it. Maybe this is going to be by increasing the price of your product. Maybe it's going to be by producing more. Maybe it's going to be by producing it in a different country. You got to keep grinding and show why you're special. Choose your strategy was a big one that I learned about. Pricing strategies are, and there's hundreds. Each literally went through a list of like 6 or 7, and there's a bunch. There's traditional forms, which is like price skimming, where you deliberately set a price high to start and maximize short-term profits, but then you lower it over time. It's also called riding the curve. Apple's famous for this one. When a product first comes out, they keep it high, but over time it gets lower. Another traditional pricing strategy is penetration pricing, setting prices low to attract customers with like the hope that your customers are going to keep going. Like after you sign that contract, like say like DirecTV, credit cards are big for this. They'll like offer a very low interest rate, a low monthly bill for the first year, but then they really hike it up later. Demand-oriented pricing is a big one. This is where pricing fluctuates to reflect like demand levels. Like airlines are big on this one. So like when demand's low, price is high. When demand's low, oh, prices are low. But when demand's high, your prices are going to increase as well. There's other types of pricing, like psychological pricing, which is like 19.99 instead of $20. It makes it sound smaller. Uh, if you actually, one interesting one was if you make the 99 cents like a smaller font than the dollars, it actually has been shown to like make people feel like it's even smaller yet. Bundle pricing is a big one. If you buy two things together, it creates a smaller package price. And I mean, you see that one all the time. From like Wendy's, what is it, 4 items for $5 or something. Whereas if you were to buy the 4 items separately, it'd cost you like $8. So that was interesting. Another big one that or one other impact that like social media had was on the marketing. Like let's see, like Fortnite. If you don't know what that is, it's like a video game where it's all virtual, and users pay for virtual goods, points, upgrades, gifts. Where it's literally 100% profit. Fortnite's not sending you anything. There's nothing material. There's businesses out there like that that are just profit, 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 profit. It's insane. They have, other than like creating the content, there's no money going out. It's unbelievable. Social media just gives you a whole new audience. It was a little hard for like my product really because saffron is you can only produce so much, whereas like some of these other businesses that I've been talking about with these pricing strategies can produce as much as they need or as much as people are willing to buy. Another reminder in this pricing and sales strategy was stay committed to company missions and goals. Sometimes as success wanes or increases, the company sacrifices their goals and missions in order to make money. And it's important that you don't do that because then you might lose customers. If you start to change how you act, they're going to change how they act. And that's not going to work out very well for you many times. Another one was to be creative and adjust to the market. Don't try to force company success in a non-approachable market. This makes a lot of sense. If the market is there, do it. If the market's not there, look to adjust your product, look to adjust to the population, or maybe move to a different population. If you're really committed and really want to do like a special service or to provide to some people that no one else does, you might have to move. You might have to go to a different part of town, a different country. Honestly, if you're really committed and you know that's what you want to do, there are options. At this event, I met other similar-minded entrepreneurs. This one was way more not only entrepreneurial, like in its foundation, but other people at the info session at the library were either the same age, just starting. There was a couple in another college class that like they were starting to set like prices, and so they came to this. There was a woman there who had just failed in a business and was looking to learn more about why she might have failed. So that was kind of interesting because she told her personal story at the end. So this was a really valuable networking event that I attended. I'm really glad that this was part of the project here. So that makes the end of my recording. Thanks so much for helping me throughout the semester. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and I hope you have a great rest of your year. And I hope your wedding was fantastic. Thank you, and have a great night.